What's up, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. We're doing a Bad Batch Spectacular this week. 20 questions all about the past season, so let's dive in.
Damien Vonderhaar and Caffeine Imperium both ask if the mountain in the final scene was Mount Tantus.
So we did get this answered sort of officially. I mean, I guess officially, but like in a weird way. It was all in the StarWars.com episode guide, and it was only labeled under concept art and all that. But yeah, I think that's Mount Tantus. I think we're going to see more to come from that place.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if they actually call it that, or if that's just like a behind-the-scenes code name for that area, that place, if they'll even name it in the show. But I think it's safe to assume that's what that is.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like one of those things where, just because the Slave one has come up a lot recently, the Slave one is never named on screen, I don't think, but you know, we all know what it is. So they might not ever on screen call it Mount Tantus, but like everyone who's read the Thrawn trilogy is like, we know what it is, and it's probably going to serve a similar purpose.
Guiguio and Kyle Smith both want to know what Nalase could be working on at Mount Tantus.
So they asked StarWars.com asked the head writer, Jennifer Corbett, and the main director for the series that question, and they were like, I don't know.
Well, what are Kaminoans good at?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly cloning. And they were asking specifically, does it have to do with Palpatine and his return and all that? I think that's a safe bet. I also think that it might play into Thrawn and his return. I like the idea that maybe Mount Tantus was originally meant for Palpatine and all that, but then after the Battle of Endor, it was abandoned, and then Thrawn swoops in and he's like, hey, I need a clone army. I've got some facilities here, and I'll just try to use it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And I'm sure it'll tie in somehow to Dr. Pershing and the weird failed clones that we saw at the end of Mandalorian Season 2.
Do you think that woman at the end, besides, you know, wearing Pershing's same uniform, are they colleagues? Is that Pershing's mother or something? How do you think? Or
I'd say,
do they know each other at all?
Maybe colleagues. I don't know if we're going to see Dr. Pershing or not. He seems like kind of low on the totem pole.
He'd have to be pretty young at this point, but he could be like a Doogie Howser type. I think Force Center made that joke on their breakdown, and it was like little savant kid who's like really into cloning.
Did she get a name?
No, not that I know of.
She might be Dr. Pershing the first.
Right.
Kyle Smith also asks what Lama Su's fate was, and James Fonda asks if there were any Kaminoans left in Tipoca City when it was destroyed.
So I think it was pretty clear, at the very least heavily implied, that Lama Su was killed. They just didn't do it on screen. I'm surprised we didn't hear that flamethrower go off again. But really, it's just, yeah, Lama Su is gone, and I think that most Kaminoans, they had a line, AZ had a line about how they were either rounded up or killed. So I don't think there are that many Kaminoans left in the galaxy.
Yeah, I don't think there were any left on Tipoca City.
No.
Lama Su's definitely dead.
Although there could have been more Kaminoans like on the other cities, because there is that line that all Kaminoan cities have been blasted and are sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah. We just saw Tipoca City.
I was hoping to get like a montage of like other cities on Kamino, but that would have made it even more sad, I guess.
Yeah, one was heartbreaking enough.
Bradley Monastir wants to know what the fate of all the Regs is.
That's a little more up in the air. I mean, it does sound like they were evacuated, but to where? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just going to be trained to be part of the Empire. I don't know that they'll be given any special treatment, really. I think they're just going to be used by the Empire, because especially if they're being trained from a young age, they're not going to know any better. So
right. It's like we saw still some regs in the season finale. Like one had to report to Rampart and say, well, we destroyed our home. Go us. But yeah, we saw the younger clones, and I think you're probably right, but I don't know. There's something, I'm still worried about all of them. And
sure.
Just the way they were like, Nala say, where are we going? And we're still going to get to be soldiers, right? And she's like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't think she even knows what the plan is. So I'm hoping that they didn't get sent to like Kessel or something.
I mean, they all have chips in their head, I assume, so the Empire could be doing experiments on their chips like they did with Crosshair.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have seen some clones still working with the Empire by the time of even after the Battle of Yavin. So it could be that some of those young clones have aged up into that role, or they could have been Clone Wars veterans. But yeah, it's still kind of a wait and see. I think we're going to explore that more in Season 2.
Sean Fitzgerald asks if Crosshair will be demoted when the Empire finds him, and will he tell the Empire that the Bad Batch escaped?
I don't think he'll be demoted. If anything, I think they're going to be surprised. They'll be like, man, we left you for dead and you still want to come back? Like, okay.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be demoted, but I also don't think he'll be promoted either. They're just going to be like, oh, you're still around? Okay.
That's probably the more appropriate response or realistic response. Like, I think he's going to serve the same role. I think he'll be in charge of those elite units, even though one saw him kind of fighting with the Bad Batch, but it was like they were forced to do that. So, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what the Empire does with him if he goes back to the Empire. We actually have a question about that coming, so I don't want to get too far into it, but I'm assuming for now he's going to go back to the Empire and they'll just be like, yeah, okay, whatever, if you really want to be here. As for whether or not he told the Empire that the Bad Batch escaped, I think he probably did. Like, that's one of those, you'd be really easily caught in a lie if they popped up, so.
Yeah, they might interrogate him a little bit about, like, did you let them escape? Like, how did they escape? And I'm sure he's just going to lie and say that, like, yeah, I almost drowned. I was trapped and they escaped.
Yeah.
And now I'm here.
You could very easily just be like, I don't know, the city was falling apart and we were separated. They may have died, but they may have escaped. I don't know.
That would be interesting to see if he does say they escaped or if he says, like, I don't know.
Yeah, like a little bit of defending his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eric Stammer wants to know if Crosshair will be back with the Empire in Season 2, or will it be a Zuko alone type situation?
So yeah, this is the question I was just referencing. And I hadn't considered that. My assumption was just, he'll go back to the Empire. They mentioned scouts coming, so he'll probably get picked up. I think that's what they're implying, but I do really like that idea that maybe they don't come get him, and maybe he does just strike out on his own like Zuko does in Season 2. He's forced to just go figure out who he is for himself. And I definitely see some Zuko parallels here with Crosshair and his frustrating refusal to make the right choice. I think that would be really interesting.
I think if that were the case, like, I think the Empire, they are going to come find him, or the scouts will. And then depending on whether or not the Empire wants to keep him around, or if they're like, we don't need you anymore, goodbye, I think that will determine what happens with Crosshair. Because he seemed like really gung-ho about the Empire and wanting to be a part of it. So because of what happened, I don't see him just like going off on his own for like a self-discovery mission.
Yeah, again, very similar to Zuko, where Zuko wants to go home, but he's framed for treason, basically, and so he's like, I have to go into hiding. So yeah, if the Empire picks him up, and they're like, oh, you let the Bad Batch escape, well, we're going to have to execute you. There's got to be some punishment, and then he escapes himself, but doesn't feel ready to go back to his brothers. I think that's an interesting setup.
DarthMax66 asks if Crosshair could join Delta Squad in Season 2.
I'm not getting my hopes up that Delta Squad is going to keep popping up. I was thrilled to see Scorch appear. I'm not expecting that we'd get everyone, but if you fit it in with Delta Squad lore, like they did lose a member, so it's kind of like, yeah, maybe they do want another commando to come and take Sev's place, but I'm not getting my hopes up that Delta Squad is going to really be front and center for Season 2.
Yeah, I mean, it might go along with my theory of them taking the regs that are left and like messing with their chips. But I don't think that he's going to go be a part of another group. Like, you can tell he feels a little bit sad, or a little bit like thrown away, tossed away by his brothers in the Bad Batch. So I don't see him going to join another group.
But now that you mention that, I'm like, okay, that is a little bit interesting to see him join another squad that's already got that tight-knit family feel, and he still feels like he's on the outside.
Maybe. Like, if I could see him doing it to like stick it to them even more, but I don't know. And
they are bringing in more and more Imperial commandos, or Republic clone commandos, however you want to classify them at this point. So, I'm definitely not saying there's no chance Delta Squad's going to come back. It's more just, I don't want to get my hopes up.
Jacob Harbor wants to know if we'll see any new members join the Bad Batch in Season 2. AZ.
Yeah, I think AZ3 should count. Which I am surprised by. So I do wonder if he's going to be a regular member of the cast, or will it be like Gregor, who they pick up and then drop off at Sid's, and who knows if we see Gregor again. We probably will, but...
Yeah, I could see them keeping him around because he was pretty helpful when they were trying to escape Kamino.
I hope they do, but I still think it's going to be... I don't think we're going to see a ton of clones joining for a lot of episodes. I think it'll probably follow that Rebels or Resistance pattern where it's like you meet a lot of people along the way, and then when you get to a season or series finale, it's like the whole gang comes in to help out. But I think for the most part, it's still going to be that core group of 5, plus AZ maybe, and Gonki, of course.
It would be interesting, though, if they did keep AZ around, and that's what gives us an Echo-centric episode, because Echo's going to be like, oh, well, I'm not as special now that there's a droid around with the same little hacker
abilities,
hacker doohickey arm thing as me. So that could be a catalyst to getting an episode more about Echo, and like them being like, no, this is why we want you around.
I like that.
Ben asks how much time passed during Season 1.
I'm going to guess between 6 months and a year.
Yeah, I think a year is probably a good bet. Because we know that they were going around doing other missions, because they mentioned...
There were definite time jumps of, like, yeah, they mentioned some missions that Sid sent them on that we didn't actually see.
Is it Cato Nemoidia?
Yeah, that sounds right.
They mentioned something.
I think it was in the Infested episode.
Yeah, so we know that they've been going and doing other things in between episodes, so I think a year is probably a good bet.
I know the Ahsoka book takes place a year after Revenge of the Sith, and in that book there are Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters and Stormtroopers, which seems fast, and I don't really think they're going to stick to a book's timeline. They could always kind of shift that and say it was, about a year, whatever. But that's why I'm kind of saying, I'm not going to guess it's a full year, but it's probably getting close. I think we're getting close to being able to see TIE Fighters and Star Destroyers, and I mean, the TK Troopers are moving quite along.
Nick Canavan asks where and how we think Season 2 will start.
I think it'll start like in the middle of a mission gone wrong, just to really kick things off into a really frantic beginning. And whatever that is, they'll rescue someone, maybe another clone, and then they'll take them back to Sid's. So we get an exciting start, and then we go back into familiar territory, and we get to find out where we are, get our bearings and all that.
I'm going to say that it starts right where we left off.
Really?
Because we're going to have to see what happens with Crosshair. Or maybe they'll just glaze over it and be like, yeah, he's with the Empire now. We don't have to show how or when that happened. But it might be kind of cool to see the Empire picking up Crosshair, and then whatever conversation the other members of the Bad Batch have after leaving Crosshair behind.
I'm going to just throw down my random guess that it'll start with the Bad Batch saving Wolf from something, just to get him into the story, because I imagine that's going to happen at some point.
Leftist Hominid wants to know if Grogu will be in Season 2, maybe after being discovered by Nala Se.
I'll let you start.
If he is, I think would just have him as like a hologram and be like, this is something that we're looking into right now. So like maybe a hint to Grogu, but I don't think he's gonna be in it.
I am coming around on the idea. It feels a lot like Boba Fett and The Mandalorian to me, where in season 1 I was like, no, we need to get to know the new Mandalorian before we bring in all these cameo characters, and I think they handled that pretty well. And I did not want Grogu in season 1 of this show, and until the finale, I probably still would have been like, no, don't want Grogu. It just feels too commercial to be like, oh, everyone loves Grogu, we got to put him in everything. But with the Mount Tantus stuff and the idea that we are going to be probably tying in with experiments that are happening in The Mandalorian, I do kind of like that feels like a much better setup than just, oh, we got to rescue this baby from the Jedi Temple, or oh, we got to do this rescue mission and oh my gosh, it's Grogu. But instead to be like, oh, the Empire had Grogu at some point, and then they lost him because maybe, Nala Se sees what's going on and contacts Omega, and then they go save him from Mount Tantus. I'm like, I like that a lot more than the way I imagined him coming into this show if he were going to.
And then Grogu's part of the Bad Batch for a season.
The problem that I see with it all is, how do they lose him? How does Grogu then wind up in captivity with all like those Niktos and
Crimson Dawn?
Maybe. Yep.
Your theory about Crimson Dawn.
Oh my God. It's all coming together.
Eli HS asks if the Batch will have to worry about bounty hunters chasing them anymore.
It's a good question because the Kaminoans sent all the bounty hunters after them. I definitely don't think we've seen the last of Fennec Shand, but is she chasing the Bad Batch or is she just keeping an eye on Omega?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any bounty hunters going after them for a job.
I do think maybe the Empire could, if they know that they're still alive, they could be like, yeah, they're a problem. Rampart seems pretty annoyed with them.
Bounty hunters, we don't need their scum.
I don't know. I could see them maybe hiring some bounty hunters. I still feel like, and I know you want Boba Fett in the show, so I feel like he's got to come in somehow, but it doesn't have to be because they're being hunted by him.
Yeah, I think he'll still come in as a friend of Fennec Shand somehow. Like, Fennec is going to tell him what happened to Kamino and, like, the fact that Omega exists, and Boba Fett will pop up somewhere.
I think we'll see more bounty hunters. I don't think we've seen the last of Cad Bane either. So, yeah, I definitely think they're going to pop back up. I'm not sure that they will be specifically after the Bad Batch, though.
Ben wants to know if Hauser is safe.
He's another character who I think is going to pop back up, especially after everyone lost their minds over the hot clone. I love that they're all identical, but there's still a hot one. So I think he's probably in Imperial prison, but could be broken back out.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, the next time we see him, he'll be kind of beat up a little bit. Maybe he's been tortured.
Is he going to be like,
on.
Callus, how he got a little beat up and then he became hot Callus?
Yeah.
Are we going to
He'll be even hotter Hauser.
Yeah.
Oh no.
We got hot Hauser. Hauser's just hot, but hot Hauser is like a whole new level. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we can't handle it.
It's too hot. Big Dog asks if we'll see Maul or Kira in season 2.
Of course we will. Kira, maybe not. Kira, actually, probably not. It's too early for her. But Dryden, for sure, in season 2. Didn't happen in season 1. Dryden's coming for season 2. And if that's the case, then Maul has potential.
Yeah, I'd say Maul more so than Kira. But if we're going to see Crimson Dawn, probably it would be Dryden. Maybe a little bit of Maul, but he might way overshadow the whole season just by popping up. So I don't know if they'll bring him in. It might just be Dryden.
I could see it maybe being even like what happens in Solo, that we deal with Dryden for most of it, and then the end of the episode might tease Maul. But yeah, Kira's still like 9 years away from joining Crimson Dawn. Mm-hmm. So maybe if they go back to Corellia, they could go to the silo and run into Kira. That could be fun.
Yeah, because she definitely knows about Crimson Dawn and the Hutt Cartel and all that.
She has a pretty good knowledge of the criminal underworld by the time of Solo. But yeah, since they already went to Corellia in one episode, and I'm all about the models, like they could go back to Corellia and run into a young girl. I think that would be fun, especially considering the War of the Bounty Hunters comics. Kira is getting the Crimson Reign comic after that. And, fingers crossed, she eventually comes back to live action and some Solo sequel content.
Cam wants to know how likely we think it is that Omega will be in the Book of Boba Fett.
I give it like 20% chance.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely at all. But I think we have about a Cobb Vanth's worth of a chance.
It could happen. And it could be the greatest thing that's ever happened.
I do think it would be cool to see her grown up. Maybe she's got like Wrecker Hunter's helmet, or like she's got all this, like she's got her own suit of armor, but it's just like pieces of the Bad Batch's armor, which would really tug at everyone's heartstrings. But it might be tough to pull her into live action to a show where like we're trying to get the general public into the live action shows. I don't know that a lot of people are going to know or care who Omega is at that point.
It kind of feels to me like The Mandalorian season 1, where it's going to have the Book of Boba Fett probably has its own story to tell, and maybe she'd be more likely to pop up in season 2. Like maybe in season 1, he could talk about how he has a sister somewhere out there. And then we'd be like, oh, snap, they've definitely met. And then we get season 2 of The Bad Batch where we see them meet. And then maybe season 2 of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, because see, if we do, because we didn't get Boba Fett in season 1 of Bad Batch, if we got Boba Fett in season 2, then yeah, it would have to be after the Book of Boba Fett to where we would have be seeing her.
This is real galaxy brain thinking.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, it wouldn't be till a later season if we got multiple seasons.
I'm treating Omega basically the way we treated Boba Fett in The Mandalorian, where it's like you start to tease that character and then they eventually get to come in.
Jordan Catley asks how we felt about the Cameo of the Week style of storytelling.
I mostly liked it. I didn't really treat it as a Cameo of the Week, like as in they're just doing this for the sake of a familiar character. I thought all their choices made sense for driving the story forward.
Yeah, I thought it was fine for this show. This is a spin-off show of the Clone Wars, and so because it is a spin-off show, it didn't bother me that we got a lot of cameos.
It was almost to be expected. I will admit that if we didn't have something like the High Republic going on, then I might have been more annoyed by it. But the High Republic is giving me like all the new characters and situations that I could ever want. So I'm like, yeah, that feels like it's appealing to that side of me. And so now the Bad Batch gets to be more heavily connected and it doesn't bug me. Because I am sometimes, a lot of times, one of those people who's like, not everything has to be connected all the time. But, there's a lot of different storytelling going on for Star Wars right now, and I think that's good. Just the variety is good for me.
I think we'll start seeing the connections get smaller and smaller, and we'll be branching out a lot more. But to start off a season of a new TV show, it's very much like Star Wars to be like, oh, look who it is. Oh, look who it is. We know these existing characters to bring the audience in, and then once we have their attention with the people that they know, we'll start introducing new people down the line.
Not to mention, it's just fun to see someone like Cut or Cad Bane or Toto 360, who we haven't seen them in so long, and get that back on screen is really, really fun.
Eve wants to know if Omega's potential force sensitivity is still worth discussing.
And just to build off that, is there more purpose to her like Cut said, the Kaminoans don't create without a purpose, so what's her purpose? And we did kind of stop talking about that or teasing that, and we don't know, other than they kind of dropped the bombshell that, like, no, she is a genetically unaltered clone of Jango Fett, other than the fact that she's female. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think there's any possibility she's force sensitive or has some other purpose?
I think I gave up on the idea of her being force sensitive a while ago, and I don't know that we'll revisit that. It might be something that they could kind of hint towards in the second season, but like I could see them hinting at it and being like, no, she's just Omega. She's just part of the Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm. That I think I agree. I don't think we're going to learn that she's force sensitive, but I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there's more to her, but I also don't need that. Like, I just like Omega the way she is, and but I don't know, her superpower might be empathy. Like, I just love how much she cares for everyone around her and anyone that she considers her family. So that's enough of a superpower for me.
Thomas Sholin asks who our favorite member of the batch was at the start of the season and now at the end.
Mine was Wrecker at the start.
Mine was Tech.
Mine was Wrecker at the end.
I don't know. I think it's still Tech, but I like Wrecker really grew on me. But like Tech had that really great moment talking to Crosshair and the finale that just like solidified my love for him.
I do think that's kind of the issue with Tech and Echo, is they just did not get enough to do this season. I think that's going to change in season 2. I keep reminding myself, like, you know what? Zeb got almost nothing substantial, like no real meat to his part in season 1. And then in season 2, he had a lot more focus. So I do think that'll happen for Tech and Echo. But yeah, Wrecker, I'm just a sucker for a himbo. I'll say that Crosshair grew on me a lot. I mean, you know, not in the, oh, what a great guy, but just he's fun to watch. It's like Kylo Ren, watching him try to make the right decision and fail. Like, those are the best parts of the season for me, is that reveal of like, oh, I took my chip out a long time ago. It's like, God, you're fun to watch. I'm so mad at you, but I like watching you. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.